Hello, everybody, and welcome to 30 Minute Thrive, your go-to podcast for anything and everything HR. Powered by MRA, the Management Association. Looking to stay on top of the ever-changing world of HR? MRA has got you covered. We'll be the first to tell you what's hot and what's not. I'm your host, Sophie Voller, and we are so glad you're here. Now it's time to thrive. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of 30 Minute Thrive. And welcome back, Kathy.
Thanks for having me again.
Kathy's our manager of recruiting services here at MRA for those of you who haven't met Kathy yet. And today we'll be looking at the fascinating world of social media and how that aids as a recruitment tool. So we'll really be checking out all of the innovative ways that top companies are leveraging platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram to find and attract the best talent out there. So, Kathy, let's start out with talking about how social media has really changed the way companies recruit talent nowadays.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, I think like everything else in our lives, social media has really changed the way that we work and the way that we live. Mm-hmm. There's so many different ways that you can find people, find information, get their contact information, communicate with them. And, that's the same thing on the company side. Mm-hmm. For interested candidates, there's so many ways they can see things about you, learn about different opportunities within your organization, and then also get in touch with you. And so you've really got to be prepared for, what different ways people can look at you or talk to you, and make sure that you're kind of leveraging all the tools that you can.
Mm-hmm. Great point. Kind of piggybacking off of that. What are some of the benefits that social media has to really find and attract this talent?
Yeah. So social media, can be really useful for getting a lot of information out there. But you have to be careful about how you do that. Mm-hmm. You don't want to flood a feed every day with, here's all the reasons to work for us. Here's all of our jobs that are posted, anything like that. You want to really make sure that you're focused and doing careful efforts, much like marketing. Mm-hmm. I really see recruitment marketing as its own special kind of subsection of recruitment. So how are you making sure that you're getting the word out there and saying all the right things? Again, a great benefit is the fact that you don't have to go out and find people per se. With the way algorithms are, you can put content out there and it can get in front of people who might not be connected to your brand and get them, excited about it in a way that they haven't been before. But let's be real, no one knows how algorithms work.
Right.
So there is definitely times where you're like shooting in the dark and just like, let's throw this out and see if it works. But it's working with, your marketing team to figure out how you can kind of make that best shot, maybe put a little bit of a flashlight on and see where you're going.
Oh, absolutely. Kind of looking at the other side of this now, what are some common mistakes that companies make when using social media for recruiting?
Yeah, so a couple things. Number one is, posting too much all at once. It's really easy to just go, I'm going to post, check out our jobs and a link every day or, every Monday or whatever. And that is not good for the algorithms. It recognizes that that's the same content over and over and over. And so you want to kind of make sure that you're putting some variety in there. It's also really important to take a look at what your following is before you get started. Because if your company Facebook page is all current employees,
right,
they're not going to care about jobs that are currently posted. They might want to hear more about referral opportunities or growth opportunities. If you want to try to grow that following, you have to do different things to engage different people. Same thing if your following's all customers. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily want to only be posting jobs that you have open to your customers because you might get accused of poaching their employees. So, it's really making sure that you're tailoring that content to your existing following and then separately focusing on how we can grow that following with different things.
Yeah.
You see a lot of companies that will try to do things to grow that following that ends up being kind of inauthentic or not aligned with their brand. You and I were talking the other day about, we've seen some companies on TikTok that start these like one-off like segment things that aren't related to their company at all. Mm-hmm. And they continue them because they end up getting, a following for it, but it doesn't have anything to do with their company.
Right.
And so that it becomes like, do we continue this? Because it costs money to continue it. It costs time, whatever it might be. But it doesn't align with what we do. Mm-hmm. And then when you stop doing it, you get huge pushback. You lose a bunch of followers. Right. And then there's that negative kind of impact. So You have to make sure what you're doing aligns to what your company does or what your followers want, because otherwise it's just going to end up kind of failing on you.
Yeah, and going off of that point, what social media platforms are really the most effective for recruiting, and why are they the most effective?
Yeah, so I definitely say LinkedIn is one of the most effective. Obviously, it's more of a professional focused website anyways, but they've also got some really interesting tools as part of it. Number one, there are different tools that you can use to kind of schedule those posts. So it doesn't have to be that you take an hour out of your day to make a post, get it live. Am I doing it at the right time or not? You can use those tools to schedule it. Sometimes those tools you can pay that they'll post it at the, perfect time, so to speak. But LinkedIn also has a newer feature where talent can indicate that they're interested in your brand right on your company page. And then if you have LinkedIn Recruiter or if you're using LinkedIn Job Slots, they'll highlight that this person is interested in your brand. So that's really awesome because
I love that.
Your talent. Yeah. We were looking at some of the stats and it's crazy, how easy it is for people to then say, maybe there's not a job out there right now for them, but hey, in the future, there might be one. On the candidate side, they then get a notification anytime you post a new job on LinkedIn. So like I said, if there's not a job that's open for them right now, they'll get pushes from LinkedIn to say, hey, this company now has this job open. Does this interest you? Let's talk about it. LinkedIn is also great for that reach out. It's kind of easy to find people who work in that organization. You can kind of put together who would be the right person to reach out to for this. And then they have the messaging platform. So that's always really great. Facebook, I do think is helpful. It is an interesting site, in terms of who uses it and who doesn't. But it is still helpful to have that information out there. Again, it's about looking at what your following already is. Is it all employees or is it all, people who might be interested, kind of taking a look at that. I will say Instagram, TikTok, those I don't see as much success with. You can do ads and that's great. But if it's not something that's authentic to your brand, it's really easy for people to spot. And, and that's the case in marketing too. If it's not something that makes sense, the only time it works is if you're Scrub Daddy, because that they're just trying to make viral videos and it works, but they're also not using it for recruiting. They're using it to sell sponges. Great sponges, don't get me wrong. But,
yeah, I would kind of also echo that and just say it just depends where your target audience is. So where are you most likely to find a candidate for the position you're posting? And also, like TikTok, like you said, are you going to find prospective candidates on TikTok? Maybe, but should you rely on just TikTok or the smaller platforms, Instagram? Probably not. But yeah, those are all good points that you said.
Yeah.
So would it be enough to just post on like Facebook jobs or just post on LinkedIn or just kind of put all your eggs in one basket?
I always say, try to spread it out. It's important to think about where people that you're targeting might be looking. And also where there might be opportunities for growth. So there's no harm in asking your employees, hey, when you found us, where were you looking? How did you spot us? What information did you see about us? But I think it's important to kind of spread things around in terms of posting jobs too. So many different job boards, you post in one place, but it can feed to a few different others.
Yeah.
And so making sure that the word is out there and that you're getting in front of as many people as possible is really what's important. I think it's also really important to make sure that those posts that you're making give a good amount of information. I love those postings that are the job description copied over. And I especially love when it has like employee signature at the bottom where it's literally copied over. You really want to make sure that what you're putting out there is tailored to that person, is exciting for them, makes them want to read more. Making sure that you're not just putting, we have benefits or we have health insurance. One of the speakers at the HR conference recently talked about that she was like, I love companies that have health insurance, dentist, vision, like who cares?
What else?
What else? So, highlighting those things that make you unique or are good offerings to your employees. And that's where sometimes posting on social media when you do have a heavily employee following is really nice reminders for them too.
Right.
Making a post, if you're in May and it's Mental Health Awareness Month, that you have the EAP offerings and what that all includes. Making a post about different employee resource groups that you might have. Those things are attractive to people who are looking at your company, but might also be really good reminders for people who are already there.
Absolutely, yeah. I would also encourage to post on multiple platforms if you can, just because with social media algorithms too, all of your followers aren't seeing that post. There's actually only about 5% who are seeing your post, so it is good to kind of space it out and do multiple different posts on multiple different platforms. So how can companies really measure the success of the social media posts and recruiting posts?
Yeah, so it's all about getting a baseline for what a good post looks like. So that might be taking a look at some of your historical posts and saying, okay, for what we typically do, we have this many views, this many interactions, those things that you can track. You can't necessarily say, okay, did this post lead to a candidate? Because you don't really know that. No one says, I saw the LinkedIn post you made on January 1st and it inspired me. No one says that.
Someone may.
Someone may, and I love them. But you never know when one specific post leads to a candidate. So looking at, are we getting views? Are we getting interactions? Are people sharing it?
Yeah.
Those are the important things that you can do to measure. Long term, yes, you can look at what do our applicant numbers look like? Have we seen an increase between Q1 and Q2 when we started posting more heavily in Q2? But it's all about really kind of making sure that those views and those reactions that you're getting are aligned with what you're looking for. But if you don't know where to start, and there's not a lot of companies who are willing to share, like, we have great views and great metrics and we're willing to share, so you can be a baseline, you have to start with creating your own.
Yep, I totally agree. I think engagement is a huge measure of success with recruiting and social media posts in general, because if you aren't getting the engagement you like, likes, comments, shares, then maybe now is the time to kind of reevaluate the content that you're posting and make sure you're speaking to your following. And are you making your posts interactable? So maybe include a poll or include a call to action or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And don't be afraid to, respond to some of those comments that you get, even if they might be a little on the negative side. It's better to respond and show that you are engaging with your brand and with what you're posting than to just let those comments sit out there and float. And, but there's a fine line. If you start to see a conversation building, there's no need to
take it off,
butt in and say, hey, I think this is great too. Or there is a way you can say, hey, let's take this offline.
Yes.
Depending on how that conversation's going. So, but it is, we've seen that post perform better when you do, interact with people in the comments, when you do respond. It can get a little cheesy if you're saying great thought on every single comment. So have a little variety to it. This is a great example of how you can engage your marketing team.
Yes.
And say, hey, marketing, I have this idea for a post. What do you think? And hey, marketing, we got this comment and I want to make sure we respond to it. How can we craft something that aligns with our standards? Things like that are really important to keep that marketing team, engaged in that conversation and make sure that you're aligning to kind of your whole brand.
Yeah, love that. So how can companies then use social media to build up their brand overall and attract these candidates?
Yeah. So one of the things that you can definitely do, and actually something we haven't touched on yet, is Glassdoor and Google reviews. So there are still a number of people who are looking at reviews of companies and what their current and former employees are saying. They might not be looking before they apply. They might wait until after they apply. But it is really important to make sure that, what you have out there is engaging and is exciting, or that you're addressing the ones that might not be as nice. I've talked to a number of companies that actually have kind of a schedule. So every 2 weeks, they randomly select, a certain amount of people to say, hey, we want to hear how things are going at ABC company. Here's the link to Glassdoor. Could you please, leave us a review? And it's a great way to kind of continue to build the reviews that you have on that platform. a lot of times you see really positive and really negative, but that helps get kind of that in between. And it's the same thing when you're looking at reviews on when you're buying something. I just bought an air fryer this weekend, and I looked at the 5-star and I looked at the 1-star, and I said, okay, now let's get the real story. And I looked at the 2, 3, and 4-star reviews and said, okay, some of these 1-stars appear to be user error and appear to be that specific person. Some of these 5 stars seem like they were paid to get them, and that's always not good. And it's the same thing in employee reviews. So starting with something like that of just saying, hey, we'd love to, hear your thoughts and get a review. Here's the link, or here's a QR code to go fill that out. And don't be afraid of Google reviews. Everyone kind of thinks of Glassdoor right away, and Glassdoor and Indeed are now combined. And so anything that they fill out on Glassdoor also shows on Indeed. But so many candidates, when they're searching for jobs, they'll just search project management job and in Google. And then when they're looking in Google Jobs, it's showing those Google reviews to that candidate. So, and Google reviews are even easier than Glassdoor, because Glassdoor wants you to fill out so much information before you make a profile. So, talking with people like that and getting the true feedback of what's going on is super helpful. In addition, when you look at your existing following, maybe you see, okay, we've got a lot of employees. What can we do to help build it so we get potential candidates too? And maybe it's talking with your employees and saying, hey, we've got this post coming out. I'd love for you to share it, so that your friends can see. Maybe they follow us. Maybe it's about their referral program or a sign-on bonus or anything of that nature. And that can really help, because it's way more common for people to follow something or engage in something when someone that they know has shared it versus it being a paid ad. Of course, paid ads are successful, but that is also a great kind of free way to do it too.
And I would say that if a candidate is applying for jobs on LinkedIn or other social media, chances are they're also going to be checking out that company's LinkedIn page or that company's other social media pages. So if you're a company that doesn't really have a strong LinkedIn page or presence, maybe now's the time to do a little makeover. And if you don't know what to post, I would just encourage you to do company culture posts. So who do your employees look like? What does your office or place of work look like? Post about your company vision and mission. And LinkedIn is good for thought leadership posts. So what can you put out on LinkedIn that your competitors can't put on LinkedIn? So when a candidate is going to your LinkedIn page, they see all of that great stuff, and it's kind of a reminder to them that, hey, this would be a great place to work, stuff like that.
Yep, exactly.
So what role does content play in social media recruitment, and how can companies create really engaging content?
Yeah. So again, it kind of plays to what do you want to target. So if your content is really focused on opportunities that you have, benefits that you have, it can really help kind of lead to potential candidates if you're able to get that word out. But, it's really all about making sure you have enough of a presence that it's clear that you're engaged. It's clear that, you are posting often, you're updating things, your website is updated, because that can even be something. You get so focused in social media, and then you have different information on what you post versus what's on your website.
That's a good point.
And so, making sure that content is aligned with everything that you're doing is super important. And, I think when it's really authentic content, when it's stuff that is true to your company, true to what people are saying, it really helps to make people believe it, and again, make people want to learn more.
So what, kind of moving into a different zone here, what ethical considerations should companies keep in mind when using social media for recruiting?
Yeah, so you really want to make sure that you're not, crossing any lines. You mentioned it's great to have pictures of people from your company in there. It's also great to make sure they're okay with it first. And if they leave, it's great to get that updated too. If you're in a big company and, you don't see a ton of faces as often, and you're using someone's picture who left 2 years ago, that someone in your company might not realize that they left 2 years ago.
Right.
And they're like, well, they've been on the website the whole time. I thought this was them. So, it's things like that you definitely want to take care to know. it's also really important to make sure that you're not, using a trend that isn't necessarily a great trend to tie your business to.
Right.
There's been some examples recently of businesses that are, jumping on a bandwagon and not really realize what they're jumping onto, or using a sound and not really realizing what that sound says. So, you want to make sure that you're careful as you're considering content to post. And that, if someone were to call something into question, that, you can stand by it. And not just say, oh, it was a trend, so I thought it was okay. So
Definitely.
it can definitely be, a little tricky sometimes to navigate that. And there are some large companies who say, we won't use any copyrighted media because we are too worried about running into issues with that, which is totally okay and totally understandable. The social media world we live in is kind of interesting sometimes with some of that content. So, just going hard and fast with that can definitely keep you protected. It obviously also really limitates you. I will say some of my favorite content, though, is some of those larger companies that are like, we can't use copyrighted social or copyrighted songs. So this is our intern singing this song for you. Don't ask me.
No one wants to hear that.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
So what advice would you give to companies then to use social media as a recruiting tool for the very first time?
Yeah, so for the first time, number one, get your marketing team involved. They are the ones who typically own that website anyways. And so you really need to make sure that you're talking through with them and that you are, getting everything through them. Again, take a look at that following you already have and try to align that content to what makes sense. It's also really important to know that social media is so weird with how things do and don't take off. There are things that, you're like, no brainer, this is going to hit, and it just gets lost.
Yep.
And so, it's okay to try some different things, do some A/B testing, try things out a couple of times on social media. Again, nobody knows how the algorithms work, so
They're always changing.
they're always changing.
Yes.
So it's okay to, kind of play around with things, but most of all, have fun with it. I think people can tell when you're just posting, like, I just got to get this done.
Posting to post.
Got to do it. And so make sure that you're having fun with it. Also, don't be afraid to ask people who might not be like kind of that first person you think of. Social media is a tool that really almost everyone uses. And so it might be a fun learning opportunity for somebody else or like a fun challenge for someone who you typically wouldn't think would want to, talk about recruiting or things like that.
Totally.
So there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. There's no right or wrong way other than engage marketing.
Good advice. So when does social media not work then when trying to recruit?
I'd say if you're just trying to be viral, or trying to get one thing to really take off, it's probably not going to work. If you're just trying to get the word out about your jobs, unless you have a way to make it engaging, to have conversations around it, it probably isn't going to take off. So, and then if you're starting from like absolute square one, don't assume that your postings are going to get, thousands of views in a day. It's got to be a long-term effort. It's got to be something that you're willing to, put some effort into. You can't just assume, all right, boom, posted, done, I can walk away and it's all fine. Because that's where you're not going to see success.
Yep. And not all companies need to be on all social media platforms. It's quality over quantity.
Yes, absolutely.
So kind of wrapping up here, do you have any real life success stories with social media and recruiting?
I've got a couple of interesting ones. So like I said, I've worked with one company before that asks for those routine reviews from their employees, and they've actually seen, I think it was a full star increase over the course of a year, their first year of doing it. And so they gave it that time and, really let it kind of grow. And employees really appreciate it. Again, part of that is that they are following up on some of those things. They're also keeping it completely anonymous. So the person who kind of pulls the names and decides who to reach out to then deletes the emails that they sent and does not keep a record of who they've already reached out to. So there's no way that they can say, oh, well, we know we reached out to these 5. Here's this one bad one that we got, so it must be one of these 5, and I'll start to investigate. You got to kind of forget those names and let them go right after. But they've seen great success from it. And they saw really interesting things that the employees were saying were pros that they never really thought of as pros. And so it's really great that they were able to kind of like take that step back and see things that people were saying, like, I can't remember the specific, but like, you know, as an example, oh, I love that we have, you know, coffee in the cafe. And they were like, oh, we do have coffee in the cafe. Like, that's just a standard. I never thought, but like that was something in that industry wasn't, you know, a standard. And so, you know, that can help you to kind of get things that you can highlight in your content or things that you can highlight in your postings. Again, really, really great success with that consistency across your different postings too. So I've seen, you know, not so success stories of companies that have one thing on their website, then one thing's on their postings. But when you have that consistent messaging, that consistent language, if you're linking the posting back to your careers page for more information, instead of trying to fit everything that you have in your posting, you know, that really helps you to be successful without kind of blurting everything out there and getting it all into one post. Because, you know, posting wise, they do see that there's a certain character limit that you want to stay between. And so sometimes getting everything about your culture and your values and all of that needs to take kind of that second seat. And is just on your careers page. So the companies that really focus on, you know, building those postings, building that brand, that's where we've seen some great success.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have today. So thank you again for being here and all the great info you gave us on social media as a recruiting tool. So listeners, I would just encourage you to like, comment, and share this podcast and post. And if you enjoyed it or learned something, that's great. And also take a look at the resources in the show notes below on becoming an MRA member. We also have Kathy's bio and LinkedIn profile in there too. So if you want to get in touch with her, have any questions, she's there for you. Otherwise, we'll see you next week, and thanks for coming on the podcast again, Kathy.
Thanks again for having me.
And that wraps up our content for this episode. Be sure to reference the show notes where you can sign up to connect for more podcast updates. Check out other MRA episodes on your favorite podcast platform. And as always, make sure to follow MRA's 30-Minute Thrive so you don't miss out. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next Wednesday to carry on the HR conversation.